Alright, so what is going on? Today, we are taking a somewhat, 10-year-old computer. So this is a Dell Inspira 560. It has the Intel LGA 775 socket, which has tons of potential. You can upgrade to the Q6600. In this case, we are going to put in a Q9400. So we can take the grandmom's PC and turn it into something that we can game on. We are also going to throw in 8 gigs of RAM, all for under 30 bucks with CPU. I am going to do benchmarks with the RX 480 because that is what I have. But what will fit into the small profile like this, it's only a half of case, is a GTX 1050 MSI low profile edition. So that will actually just plug and play in here, no external connectors needed. So we're going to take this and we're going to show you guys how to upgrade it and what you can expect out of it. Also, stay tuned to my channel because I got a bunch of cheap ways to make gaming computers for like motherboard and CPU under like 30 bucks. So stay tuned. Alright, I do want to apologize for the birds to start off with. I got the one in the closet, which is pitch black, and the other one is covered, so I don't know why they're still screaming. Okay, so we're going to pop off the cover. So while we're in here, we can also do the SSD conversion from HDD, hard disk drive. But we're actually just going to worry about the CPU, the RAM, and then GPU, which I'm just going to do the benchmarks. I'm not going to show you guys that. So the RAM, we probably only have 2 gigs in here. DDR3, yes sir. And we're just going to throw in 8 gigabytes, good enough for gaming. You do want to pay attention to what slots we got to use. CPU wise, we're just going to pop off the cooler. It's just a factory cooler. That's all we really need. It's probably only a single core in here. I'm not really sure, actually. This came out of the trash. So I do have some projects coming up, mostly quad core projects. We're comparing, very cheap quad cores that you can get. A lot of Xeons. Some of them are going to be, i5s, i7s, whatever else. But I'm basically going to show you guys because a lot of the motherboards are the expensive part, not the CPU. So I'm going to show you guys what CPUs and motherboards we compared together to give you epic gaming performance, epic gaming experience for a low price. So cooler came off, no problem. Actually, it wasn't even stuck very good. As you can see, it's all dried. Just gonna lift up the retention arm. I am so sorry about the birds too. There's really nothing I can do with them because that cage is 8 foot by 6 foot or something stupid. So there's really nothing I can do. I know you can do the Xeon mod with this too, but we're not worrying about that. I went with the Q9400 only because it has the higher clock speed and it is slightly newer architecture than the Q6600. Not that that's going to matter much, but since it has the higher clock and this is a non-overclock capable board, we're going to benefit from that there, where the Q6600 is a pretty good overclocker, but we don't have an overclocking board. So we're going to gain both benefits. Also, I know there's 2 megabits less cache, but I don't think that's really going to make a difference, as in the CPU is only $10. Alright, so I just grabbed regular alcohol, and then a paper towel. We're just going to get off the bulk with a dry one, and then we can go over it with the alcohol. And then we're just going to do a quick swab over with alcohol. We're also going to do the CPU real quick. Not too bad looking. We're not worrying about any fancy coolers or anything because, like I said, we're not overclocking, and theoretically this chipset and CPU should handle the CPU itself should handle the chipset, or the chipset itself, vice versa, and whatever else. Everything should be compatible. Honestly, what made me came up with this idea is I have a 36 core system workstation that I use daily, and what made me came up with this is that I was actually looking to replace that because single thread performance on the AMD chips aren't quite as good as Intel. Not that this is going to be my my new system, but made me start looking at solutions. And I'm not one of those guys that are just going to grab something. As you can see, I just put a straight line there, or a diagonal line. You don't need a lot of thermal paste. I'm not one of those guys that run out and just buy, a 16 core brand new Threadripper or something like that. I like to use some older hardware and get a deal on it. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the latest and greatest features, just as long as I have my USB ports and whatnot. Like, I run a server board on my primary. And I'm not trying to make this video long or anything. As you can see, when we get done this, I'm just going to throw up the benchmarks, and that's going to be the video so you guys can compare yourself some of the other CPUs that I tested. But for you guys to see all the CPUs that I'm going to be testing, you guys stick around to my channel because there will be quite a bit of them. I'm testing a couple different platforms. There's going to be one AMD system, which I don't recommend. And then we go ahead and close it up. And I'm just going to throw off the benchmarks now. Showed you guys the upgrade and what parts we need and whatever else, how to. So throw up the benchmarks. You guys can see for yourselves. Stick around to the channel. I'm going to be testing all kinds of CPUs, combinations with motherboards. I can tell you one thing, everything is under $50 with the motherboard and CPU, and some of them you might be able to get motherboard, CPU, and RAM for under 50 bucks and have an epic gaming performance computer. So, let's just throw off the benchmarks. So a few things I want to mention about the benchmarks that you guys just witnessed. The system did feel snappier than the AMD FX 4100 for Fortnite. I had this weird issue where the buildings weren't rendering completely. It was playable, but like you would come, flying in a town, and then you would come upon a building that didn't render correctly, and you couldn't do anything with it. I wanted to also mention the MSI Afterburner. For some reason, when I would open up a program, would just crash on me. I don't know why. And it only happened to the system. I was using the same hard drive throughout all the systems, so that is unexplainable why it would only happen on this system. Also wanted to mention that it is the 2nd gen Core 2 quad. And the benefit of the 2nd gen, I'm giving this, the benefit of the doubt. This is going to be your best case scenario processor because it has the faster front side bus. A little bit about the architecture is that it has 2 cores on this side, 2 cores on this side, and there's a front side bus interface between the 2 cores. Well, the faster that front side bus is, the faster communication between 2 cores on this side, 2 cores on this side can correspond to each other. So this is the best case scenario and the best processor for that case. Now with some overclock, I'm sure the numbers can be a little bit better, and it probably can be a more viable gaming solution for your higher end AAA games, but it won't solve the fact that you can't add codecs to the processor itself that was not incorporating at the factory design. For one of which would be the SSE 4.2, which is required to run Modern Warfare, the new one, 2019. But for this kind of processor, I would put it for somewhere's a esport to older title kind of gaming computer. I wouldn't necessarily try and play your latest and greatest games on it. I would use it for older titles. You would probably have no issues from titles, AAA I'm talking about still, from like 2017, 2018, and prior, because of it needing more requirements of the CPU, and games are becoming a lot more demanding with the newer APIs and whatnot, as we can see with DirectX 12. I think that's all I have to say. No more notes on here. But with that being said, I do have, great solutions coming to the channel that can gear you in the right direction.